Okay, hello class. Today we're going to start our journey into Microsoft Excel. Now, I want to talk about Excel a little bit, just in a general sense. In my opinion, Excel is by far the coolest and most awesome out of all the programs in the Microsoft Office suite of programs. As a matter of fact, I consider it to be one of the greatest computer programs ever written, along with Photoshop and a few other programs. Now, Word is a great program too, and Word has an awful lot to it, and it takes a while to become a master of Word, but I am quite confident and sure that I can say that for every person that knows Word really well, there's probably 1/20th as many people that know Excel to the same level as Word. What is it with Excel? Well, I think Excel has kind of gotten a bad rap through the years because a lot of people think Excel is all about math, and people might have a little bit of math anxiety, and it's just put people off a little bit to get more involved with Excel. Well, the truth is that Excel is about working with numbers, but you do not have to be a math whiz to excel at Excel. You do have to put in some time and make a commitment to learn it well. Its tools and true capabilities are deep and wide, just like they are in Microsoft Word. But many more people have mastered Microsoft Word, which I find ironic because Excel to me is actually a more powerful tool and program for most businesses. And I would easily say that if you have intermediate level or above Excel skills, you can be a very valuable person when looking for a job. And if you were a Excel expert compared to a Word expert, you would definitely have a leg up on the Word expert because so many more people know Word better than Excel. And like I said, the reason is I think a lot of people have been intimidated by Excel. The truth of the fact is it's an amazing, powerful, and wonderful program. And I encourage everybody and anybody to learn as much about Excel that they can. You could become a consultant just if you knew Excel to an expert level. You could do nothing more than be an Excel consultant. But if you're looking for a job and you have some good Excel skills to put on your resume, then you are going to be in demand. And I am quite positive that just the fact that you know Excel will definitely help give you a leg up to get a job because most people cannot say that they know Excel above and beyond just the basics. So hopefully this course is going to give you a good introduction to Excel and a good foundation and platform from which to build from. One thing that is true here is the same thing that's true in Word. I don't like the way the Word training was presented in Cengage, and I don't like the way it's presented in Excel for this class because, as you recall, it just tends to jump all around the place. It doesn't really start at the beginning, and it just gives you all these different unrelated tasks without really having a true foundation into what Excel is about and what it can do and why you should be doing this as opposed to that. So I'm going to take the same approach that I took with Word. I'm going to give you a foundational approach to Excel, and then I'm just going to build on that from there and show you some what I consider to be very cool and powerful things in Excel. This introduction video is not something you have to make sure you master or learn all of this that I'm going to show you. I just am giving it to you to give you a brief intro to Excel and then to show you some of its best qualities and features. All these things that we will be talking about we'll take a deeper look at as we go through the course in the next 5 weeks. I just wanted to get you started with a good start, and that's what we're going to attempt to do here. So without further ado, let's take a look at Microsoft Excel. Okay, let's continue by starting off by talking briefly about what is it that Excel can actually do. Well, let me bring up this other sheet here. So Microsoft Excel is a spreadsheet program used like an electronic calculator to crunch numbers in many ways, do numerical calculations, budgets, forecasting, financial analysis, manage inventories, record expenditures, plus much more. Excel can create fantastic visuals with its charts and dashboards, which can turn sometimes boring numerical information into interesting and easy to read charts and graphs. Excel is great for organizing lists of information, automating complex tasks, and it can process imported info from many other sources. It is a very flexible program. So let's jump back into Excel here. So this is what a typical Excel screen would look like when you first come in. Now notice that Excel in some ways looks an awful lot like Word because it has the ribbon up here just like Word did, and it has tabs that open up different parts of the ribbon. Okay, so this design was not by accident. Microsoft used this design model to make sure that anybody that learned one program can feel comfortable navigating through any other program in the Office suite. So some of these choices are the same that they are in Word, like the Home tab and the Insert tab are the same. Word also has a page layout tab, but the contents on all these are more different than alike. And then, of course, there's some tabs here on the ribbon that Word doesn't have at all. So if you go back to Home, you'll notice it uses the same model with a dialog launcher button here on some of the sections of their different ribbons, but not all of them. And this takes you into where you can actually get and see and view more information. So there's quite a few sections that use a dialog launcher button for more information in Excel. Now, if you want to program the ribbon, you can do that one way right up here. This talks about the viewability of the ribbon. If you click on this, you get three choices. You can auto hide the ribbon, which makes it go away completely and does not come back into play until you move your mouse up to the top of the screen and then click, and then it opens it back again. And then once you click back on the worksheet, that goes away. So this is auto hide, and you have to click up on the upper margin to make this appear. Okay, another way to have the ribbon behave is to show the tabs only. So these are the main sections, and you click on each tab to open up the tab, and then you do something in Excel on the sheet, and then of course it just goes back to tab view. And then the third choice, which is the one that I prefer, is to show the tabs and all the commands. So this is what we're kind of used to from working in Word, where you see the tabs and the commands all the time. Okay, so if you ever get into a situation where you're wondering where everything went, come up here and check on this little guy right here and make sure that you have either show tabs or show tabs and commands turned on. Now, just like in Word, clicking on the File tab takes you out to Backstage View, which works pretty much the same way it does in Word. You'll have your recent documents here. You'll have some templates here, and the most common one you'll be using was for the blank workbook. You also have the same choices up and down the left margin here that you do in Word, and you have the Excel options here too, which opens up something that looks a lot like it does in Word with the option screen and then the menu over here on the left side. And we'll get back to this a little bit later. So when I say Backstage View in Excel, I'm talking about going to the File tab and working just like we did in Word. Now, if you look at the main part of the screen here, you'll see that Excel looks just like a grid. It works on a grid basis. It works on a series of rows which are numbered 1 through whatever on the left side over here. You can click and move up and down the rows with the arrow keys, up and down arrow keys. The rows are all designated by numbers, and the columns are all designated by letters of the alphabet, and you can move through these with the left and right arrow keys. So Excel is used by referencing first the column, letter, and then whatever row you're on. And if you take an intersection between a column and a row, for example, here's column M, and here's row 17, we follow it out, and we click right here. This is where all the action is. This is known as the active cell. So in this case, the cell, which always shows up here in the name box, is cell M17. Okay, if you click somewhere else, this should be R11, and there you see it right up there, R11. Whatever cell you click in, the active cell always shows up here in the name box. Now, you might be wondering, well, how many rows and columns can we have in Excel? So in case you really want to know, you can have 1,048,576 rows in Excel. So imagine this could go all the way down to 1,048,576. That's probably more rows than you'll ever need. And also, you might wonder, well, how many columns can I have? Well, Excel, here, this is rows, and let's go over here. Excel can have 16,384 columns. Okay, so if you look up here in the columns, you see they're all designated by letters of the alphabet. So your natural inclination might be to say, well, what happens to when we get to the end of the alphabet, which would be column Z right here? Well, if we just move to the right here a little bit, you can see that the next column goes back to A, but now we're using a double designator. So AA is the next column, then AB, AC, AD, and then of course we'll go all the way through the A's till we get to AZ, and then after AZ the next column is BA, then BC, BD, blah blah blah, all the way up to the C's. Okay, and this just continues all the way up, and the highest column designator you can have in Excel is column XFD. XFD. Now, let's talk about getting information into Excel. When you want to type information in, you just click in the cell that you want to type, and you just type in the information right into the active cell. What can you type into Excel? Well, obviously you're going to be able to type numbers in there, so 667. Now, when you type information into a cell in Excel, it does not get registered until you leave that cell. So right now, 667 is not completely entered into this cell until we press the Enter key or move the arrow key to the right or the left. If you press the Enter key in a cell, it takes you down to the next row in the same column, and you can see the 667 is entered. If you are back up in a cell and you press the right arrow key, it moves to the next cell. And of course, if you're over here and you press the left arrow key, you press the left arrow key, it goes to the cell to the left. So the point is, nothing gets entered here until you effectively press the Enter key or move the arrow key left or right. That is how you get your information in. So we talked about putting numbers in here. Notice when you put numbers into Excel that they get right justified. Okay, if you go to the Home tab over here, here's the justification. The default justification for numbers is always right justified. If you wanted to override that and change that, you go into the alignment column and you can move them to the center or to the right. Of course, Word has a justify option, but that doesn't apply here to Excel. But the default is always right justification. Now, You can also put alphanumeric or textual information into Excel. If Excel is a number crunching program, why would you want to put text-based information in? Well, you would want to do that because that is used to provide labeling information. For example, say this is for, let me get one more. Okay, so say these four numbers represent information from the four different regions of the country. So here's the West region, East region, South, and the North. Also, we can press the Tab key to move from one cell to the next. I notice when I put in alphanumeric information, it gets put in left justified compared to the numbers, which are always right justified. And of course, you can highlight this information and go and do an override on that, just like you do with the numbers. All this information that you typed in, just like in Word, you have to select it. You select the cells, and then you can go up and, of course, format it, make it bold, italicize it, underline it, all those sort of things. Here you can choose a different fill color for your cells, and this one right here controls the color of the text that you have in the cell. So, okay, so this information here, I'm just going to highlight it and press the delete key. I'm actually going to delete everything there. Okay, so the point is when you put information into Excel, you just type it into the Excel. Now notice when you put information in, the information also goes up here into the function bar. Okay, when you want to change information, you can change it either here or up here in the function bar. And we'll talk much more about this later. Now, you don't have to only have one cell reference. You could have a range of cells. Say you wanted to reference these cells here. This is always shows when you highlight a range of cells, which is more than one cell. It always shows up here in the upper, it shows in the name box using the upper left cell in the range. So this is K16 and it shows there. But the actual way to designate this, if you're using it in a formula, would be K16 and then a colon and then the cell at the lower right end of the range. So let's just say L24. So K16 through L24 represents this block of cells right here. Now, I want to talk briefly about the workbook versus worksheet concept. When you are working in an Excel file and you save it like you save any other file, it gets saved with a .xlsx extension. Now, whatever file you create is also known as a workbook. W-O-R-K-B-O-O-K. It's a workbook. It's an Excel workbook. Same thing as the file. Now, if you look down here, you'll see that this workbook has 3 tabs down here, and these are called worksheets. So one workbook can have multiple worksheets. Now, I have 3 on mine. This is the way it has always been for years. When you start a new Excel file or Excel workbook, you'd get 3 sheets and you can switch from one to the other. But in Excel 2016, I believe they changed it to 1. If you want to change that to always have 3 sheets, you'd have to go into options here, and on the general tab right down here, include this many sheets. Right now it defaults to 1. If you want to have 3 like I do, you have to come in here and change this to 3. Anyway, why do you have these sheets here? Well, say you had a small company that had 3 or 4 different revenue generating departments, and you wanted to have all the information in one workbook instead of a separate file for each one. So what you would do is you would use the worksheets, and these names here get assigned by default, sheet 1, 2, and 3. You can go in and right click on these and rename a sheet name. So let's say sales. Okay, right click on this one here, rename, let's say manufacturing. And then this one here, we'll right click on it, rename it, and call it R&D for research and development. Okay, so now we have more meaningful names. Now it doesn't look like we're really changing anything, but if you click the sales one has this intro to Excel. If you click manufacturing, you don't see it, and R&D, you don't see it because these are different sheets. Now, you can also color code these sheets by right-clicking on them and going in and giving it a tab color. So let's give sales a red color, manufacturing, we'll give it a green color, and R&D, we'll give it a blue color. Now, you don't really see these colors until you are clicked on a different worksheet. So the R&D, I just gave it blue, but it doesn't really look blue until you click on manufacturing. Whichever one you're clicked on, you don't really see the true color. You click on sales, and you just see a little shade of it. So you don't see the color that you programmed in until you click onto a different sheet. Now, you can also move these sheets in the order down here. You could either just click on one and drag it like that, or you could right click and you could say move or copy. So if you wanted to move manufacturing before sales, you would just click on right here before sheet sales like that. And of course you can drag them around also. If you want to add more sheets, you just click right here, and every time you click, it'll open up a new sheet. It'll give it the name sheet and then a number designated. So the next one will be sheet 5 like that. Another place you can program or control these is on the Home tab up here in the Format drop down, and there's an Organized Sheets section here which allows you to do most of the same things you can do down here. You can choose different tab colors, so we choose a yellow here for sheet 5. Let's go back up here, Format, Organized Sheets. You can rename your sheets up here and move or copy them. You cannot delete the sheets. If you want to delete a sheet, you've got to come down here, right click on it and say delete. Okay, so we're going to delete sheet 5 too. So this is a good way to keep all your information together but separate at the same time by using worksheets. Okay, so now we're going to briefly talk about formulas and functions in Excel. So let me just switch over to this Word document here. It says the real power of Excel lies in its flexibility to do most anything with numbers, with its amazing formulas and function capabilities, along with its ability to convey numerical information visually into great graphs and charts. We'll talk more about graphs and charts later. Let's just drop down here and we'll talk about formulas and functions. So here's a definition of each for you. In Excel, a formula is an expression that operates on values in a range of cells or a cell. Formulas are something that you create in order to get whatever work is necessary to be done. It's entirely created by you depending on what you are trying to accomplish. A function basically gives you a result to different situations, and functions are built in to Excel. You don't have to write a formula for functions because they're built in. Formulas are more tailored to specifically what you want to do. Now, you need to know that formulas and functions both begin with an equal sign. That is how Excel knows you're trying to do a formula or a function. How does it know which one is which? Well, as you expand upon what comes after the equal sign, Excel will know whether it's a formula or a function. Another thing you need to know is that a formula can have a function embedded inside of it, but the opposite is not true. A function cannot have a formula inside of it. Functions are a closed system. Formula is not. A formula can have a function inside of it, but a function cannot have a formula inside of it. So let's go over back to Excel and we'll take a look at a few examples. So let's start off with this column of numbers here. So what if we wanted to add up all these numbers and put the answer right in this cell right here, D13? So there's more than one way you can do this. We'll start off with a formula, which is something that we create from inside our mind. depending on what we need to have done. So if we want to add up these numbers, you can start off by putting an equal sign here, and I'll show you the least efficient way to do it first, but it will accomplish the task. So equal, you click on this cell here, and you put a plus sign, and then you click on this cell here, and you put a plus sign, and this cell here, and you put a plus sign, this cell here, followed by a plus sign, this one here, plus sign, and then this one here. So here's all the different cells we want to add up. We don't need an equal sign after D12. That's the last one. And we'll just say enter. And there is our answer. It's the sum total of all these numbers right here. If you look up here in the formula bar, you can actually see the formula that we typed in. Now, what if you had a column of 100 numbers? You really wouldn't want to type in every cell like this. So this is not a good way to do it, even though it works. So let's come back down here and just delete that formula, and we'll do another formula. Actually, we will not do a formula. We will find a function that does the same thing. Well, since adding up numbers is a very, very common thing to do in Excel, Excel has created a function for that very purpose, and it's called right over here the sum function. So the way you invoke a function is there's more than one way, but if you know the name of the function, you can just type the equal sign and type in the first couple letters of the function. So we know SU, and when we do that, we get a list of all the functions that start with SU. So we know we're looking for the sum function. So there it is right there. If we click on it one time, it'll show us that it adds all the numbers in a range of cells. Now, if we double click on it, it'll actually help us build the function for us. So it already puts in the function name in the cell and the left parentheses, which the function must have to show which information we're operating on. So now we want to tell it which numbers that we want to put in. Well, we could type in all the different cells again, but an easier way to do it is just to click on the first cell and drag down to the last cell. Now that gets put into the function, cells D7 through D12. And to close off a function, you need to put a right parentheses, but Excel will do that for you when you press the Enter key or click on the Enter key right up here. So we do that, and boom, it automatically calculates the sum for us. So that is the best way to add up numbers. You don't have to click in each cell to do it. You just build the function and drag through the numbers you want to add up. Now, I'm going to take this out of here because since adding up numbers is so common in Excel, they made it even easier than using the sum function. They use something called AutoSum, which does use the sum function, but it actually can detect automatically for you which numbers you want to add up. So you do not have to drag through the numbers you want to add up. So if you click in a blank cell here adjacent to a column of numbers, or you could do it to a row of numbers too, but right now we'll do it right here. So AutoSum looks above or looks to the left to see if there's any numbers there that needed to be added up. So if we click on AutoSum, it puts the sum function in, and it automatically knows that here's the cells we want to add up. So all you have to do is press the Enter key. What could be easier? You can do the same thing, adding up 3 or 4 columns across instead of rows up and down with auto function. It looks to the left and it looks above to see if there's anything to add up. So if you put AutoSum there, it automatically knows you want to do B17 through D17, these 3 cells. So all you have to do is press Enter. So that is how you add up numbers. You can do it the old-fashioned way, equal this cell plus that cell, but that really is totally inefficient. You want to either use the sum function or let Excel do the AutoSum with the sum function for you. So that is the example of a function. And the first thing we did was actually a formula where we added up everything one by one, but in this case, a function is much more efficient. Let's take a look at another function here. Okay, let's take a look at something else here. So say we want to get an average of a bunch of numbers. Well, how do you get the average of numbers? What you have to do is you have to add up all the numbers and then divide by the number of numbers to get the average. So let's see if we can do that with this column of numbers right here. And I know that we have 16 numbers because I counted them in advance. So let's start off. One way to do it would be to add up all the numbers using the Excel sum function and then divide that by the number of numbers. So let's see if we can do that here. So this is actually an example where we're combining a formula with a function. The function will be the sum function, and then when we divide it by 16, it becomes a formula that is using a function. You'll see what I mean. So we say equal sum, and then double click on it to help build it out, drag through the list of numbers. Now we have to close off the parentheses ourselves because we're doing more here. We're adding up the numbers, and then we're saying divide the result by 16 because that is how many numbers we have. So let's see what happens when we press enter. So it gives us 233.4194. That is the average of all these numbers here. So that is one way to do it, but there's a better way. So let's get rid of this. Excel has a average function built into it. So the average function will add up all the numbers, then it will divide them automatically, and you don't have to count how many numbers we have. So the way to do that is, it begins with AV, so type in AV, and the second one down, or if you click on it one time, it says it returns the average of all its arguments, which can be numbers or names, arrays, blah, blah, blah. The point is it will return the average. So double click on it, and now it wants to know, okay, where are the numbers you want to find the average? So you click in here like this, and you can either type in the right parentheses or just press the enter key because we're not doing anything else here. And there you go. It gives you 233.4195. If you look back up here, the function works just like what we did before, but we don't have to know the number of values that we're averaging. And an even easier way to do it is right up here in the auto sum drop down. If you click on average, it already looks to see where the numbers are you want to average, so it kind of knows automatically. So all you need to do is press the enter key. So you could either do it by the sum function and knowing the number of numbers you want to average and divide by that number, use the average function, and you have to specify the range, or you could use the average that's built into the auto sum drop down up here. Okay, so that's how you use a function to get the average of a bunch of numbers. Okay, another nice thing we can do is find the largest and the smallest numbers in a group of numbers, and that's where the max and the min function come in. So here's how you use them. Equal max, you can see it returns the largest value in a set of values. Okay, so we'll double click on it. Now it wants to know the range. Well, here's the range right here. It's starting here and going down to here, but we're not going to include the last number because that is the average of all those numbers, and that is not part of the original group of numbers. So once we specify that, we can just press enter and come up with 463.37 as the max number. Conversely, there's a min function, and it works the same way. Returns the smallest value. Double click on it to build it out and drag down, but do not go and include the average there. Okay, so there's the biggest and the smallest numbers. Now, if you did it using the built-in options up here, you can get in trouble, because if you come up here and you click max, it's going to automatically include this average number right here, and we don't want to do that. So you'd have to either change this to 22 or just do it the way I showed you before, so you don't have to make sure that you're not getting number that you don't want. So that's what I meant when I said you have to be careful when you're using anything that's built in up here, that you need to make sure it's including the right range of numbers. As long as it is, then it's okay. But since this number right here was right below this list, it was thought to be as part of the list when it's really not. Okay, let's take a look at two more functions over here. There's a count function and a count-if function. So if you look up here, the count function is actually available up here. The count-if is not. You'd have to type that in the old-fashioned way. So the count function will count how many numbers are in a list. So two ways to do it. You know the function name. You can say equals COU. And there it is, the first one there. It says it counts the number of cells in a range that contains numbers. So let's double click on it. Build it out, drag through your list here, press enter. We have 16 numbers in this list here. Okay, and we could also go up here and do it from right here. This way you don't have to drag in through the number of numbers. It already finds them for you, and you press enter and it gives you the 16 back. Now, this only works if the numbers are above where you are to the left. If you try to do this from this cell over here, wanting to count these numbers, it wouldn't work. So if you went over here and you went into count numbers, it gets all confused because it's looking above or to the left. So you can't do it that way. If you wanted to put the answer in a different cell or a different row or column for where the numbers are, you'd have to do it this way here and then drag through. Okay, now let's come back over here and try the count-if function. The count-if function works like the count function, but it counts only if a certain criteria is met. So let's say we want to add up these, we want to count these numbers here, only the ones that are greater than, say, 75. So to do that, we have to use the count-if function, COU, and here it is right here. Click on it once, counts the number of cells within a range that meet the given condition. So we double click on it, we'll drag through here, and now we have to put a comma and put our criteria in. And the count-if function, the criteria must be enclosed in double quotes. So we're going to say greater than 75 and close it off with a double quote, and then close off the whole function with a right parentheses. Hit the enter key and it comes back with 4. So there's 4 numbers here that are greater than 75. Here's one of them. Here's 2 of them. Here's 3 of them. And there's the 4th one right there. Okay, so that is a brief introduction to formulas and functions. Okay, let me show you a little bit more of a real-world example using some of the things we've already talked about. So here is a sheet which takes sales information from the manufacturing division of a company, and we want to subdivide it by quarter of the year. So here's the first, second, third, fourth quarter, and we want to also categorize it by different regions of the country, the west, east, south, and north. So let me get some data in here. I've actually got some hidden data. You see the 2 little lines up here that shows that there's hidden data between column O and column T. So if I click and drag across both of those and I right click and I say unhide, here's the data that I had hidden there. So I'm going to highlight the data. I'm going to do a Control-C to copy it. And notice this is 4 columns and 4 rows. And that's exactly what we need over here, 4 columns and 4 rows. So all you have to do is click in the first cell where you want to put the data and do a Control-V to paste the data. Now, we're done with this information over here for right now. So I'm going to highlight these 4 columns, right click, and I'm going to hide them out of the way again. Okay, so now we have our information. This is sales information for the 4 different quarters and the 4 different regions of the country. So we have our numbers here. They don't really look like dollars and cents. So let's clean up this information a little bit. The first thing we can do is take all of our numbers and go up here and change the number format to show currency instead of general. So currency will put a dollar sign in front of all the numbers. It'll put commas in after every 3 numbers, and it'll put a decimal point with 2 places there. If you'll notice here, we don't have any values that are less than $1. Everything ends in 00. So we can go up here and reduce the decimal by 2 places to get rid of those zeros. 1, 2. And now it looks a little bit cleaner. Okay, so now we have what looks like some currency information. Let's go up here and say we want to format this a little bit. We want to center justify everything here instead of left justify. So we can go up here, center justify it, and we want to give it a little bit of background color to make it look better. Okay, and then we can do the same thing over here. Center justify it and give it the background color. Okay, so now what we want to do is we want to add up the total sales by each region for the quarter. So we want to find the total sales for the West region, and we would do that by adding up these 4 numbers right over here. So we would come over here and we will use the auto sum function. Remember, we could say equal this cell plus this one plus that one. That works, but it's totally inefficient. Or we could use the sum function, which is much more efficient. But if we use the sum function, we need to tell it what criteria we want to include. With the auto sum function, it will do that for you automatically as long as you're adjacent to some numbers. So we need to get rid of the equal sign here and just click up here to auto sum, and it automatically knows that we're looking to the 4 columns to the left here. Okay, so there we have it. Now, if we want to do the same thing for the east, the south, and the north, we could build an auto sum function into each of these 3 cells right here. Or even easier, we can use something called the autofill handle. And this is a very cool and powerful tool. You see the little green box here on the lower right corner of this cell? It'll only show up when you are in the cell. And the autofill handle activates when you move the cursor over that green box and you get a little black cross. So the autofill handle, when you find the black cross and you just click and drag it down, it will take the formula or the autofill, the auto sum function, and it'll populate it down to here, and it'll just adjust the function to look at new cells for the different row that you're in. Notice up here, we're using everything in row 12, and we come down here and it's looking at row 13. We come down here looking at row 14, and down here it's looking at row 15. That is an example of the relative referencing feature in Excel. It knows that since we drop down to this row here, we're supposed to deal with these numbers here and not the ones above here where the auto sum was originally created. Now we can do the same thing with auto sum over here, but just to refresh you on how the sum function works, we'll do it the old-fashioned way. Equals sum, double click on it, and it wants to know what are you adding up, or we're adding up these 4 numbers here, and all you got to do is press the enter key. Now you can click back in here, use the autofill handle to drag right across over to here, and that will give us the sum of the quarters for each of the regions. So the first quarter for all the regions gave us this amount, and this is the amount for the other 3 quarters. Now, if you wanted to get the total sales for the year, what would you do? Well, you could either add up all of this information here, or you could add up all of this information over here. Either one should give you the same. So total sales for a year, let's just put it in here, and we would say equals sum, double click, and across from here to here should give you 2,770,252. And if we do it against this information here, we should get the same. Let's just see if that's the case. And there you go, because we're adding up the total sales by region or the total sales by quarter. Either way, it should give you the same result, which it did. So that is a quick, more real-world example. And of course, we'll get into much more things like this as we move along through Excel. Okay, lastly, I want to show you how Excel can easily translate or transfer numerical data to visual data, which sometimes makes it much easier to read, follow, and understand. So we are going to go down to the pie chart tab at this point. I created some dummy information, 10 countries of the world here, and how many nuclear warheads each country has. I added up the total down here, but that total is inconsequential. We want to present a chart to show this information. Sometimes a chart can show information in a more meaningful way than just looking at a bunch of numbers. So Excel is wonderful at creating charts. There's many different types of charts you can use in Excel. All the charts are shown on the Insert tab in the Chart section right here. You can let Excel recommend what chart you should use, or if you know what the best type of chart is, you can just go right to that chart. So what we want to do is we want to have a chart that will show how each of these values contributes to the whole, which is 3669. So this will give you an idea of how big and how small each of these countries' number of nuclear warheads is based upon the total for all these countries. So what you would do is you'd highlight the data here. So you click here, highlight the country, drag over, and then drag down to highlight this block of data. Now we're going to go over here to charts. Well, first just mouse over this, and a pie chart will show you the proportions of a whole. Use it when the total of your number is 100%. So we're trying to show how each of these numbers is proportion to the total for all of the numbers. So let's go back here. We're going to do a 3D pie chart. So it creates a chart and drops it right into your worksheet, which may not always be a good idea. And I'll show you how you can move it to a different worksheet. So here's the basic pie chart. Based upon our number, you can click in here, and the customization options on these charts are nothing short of amazing. So you could change your title. So, whoops. We want it to read top 10 and it would help to spell nuclear countries. Okay, so here is our pie chart. Now we could do a lot to make this look better. We see a legend down here which shows all the countries. We could click here on data legends, come in here and say best fit. So it's putting all of the values right in here, but a data call out probably would be a better way to do that. Now, if you click here on your chart, on your actual chart, right on the perimeter of the chart, you right click, format data labels, and we want to see not the percentage, but we want to see the value for each country. So now it shows the value for each country. Okay, so if we come back here, we can do a lot of cleaning up. We're not going to do that much now, but if you click on the value, you right click on it, format data series, you can start to pull these pieces of pie out. So pie explosion like that. If you just want to emphasize one, you would click on it one time and then pull it out like that. Okay, if you come back here, if you click on, you can see the chart has many different parts to it. If you click on this part right here, this is the plot area. You could give it all kind of effects here. You could right click on it and make changes to it. Over here, you could change the fill, solid fill, come here and give it a nice background color. We're not going to get too much more involved in this, but I just want to show you how you can really emphasize points. Now, this chart should be bigger, and it could be bigger, so what we can do is click on the chart here, click on Move Chart, and we can move it to its own worksheet diner. We're going to say we're going to move it to a new sheet, and we're going to call it Bigger Chart. Bigger pie. Okay, so there it creates its own worksheet, a bigger pie chart. Then you can go in here. Now you've got all your formatting and chart design tools, and you can start to give different styles to this chart and make it easier to read. There's a lot you can do. We can clean up these values here and make them easier to read. We'll show that more when we get into charts. The things you can do are quite amazing and really can make these charts look absolutely incredible. Okay, we're not going to spend any more time on pie charts, but I did want to move to one last thing. It's called Goal Seek, and Goal Seek is something that can really show you some of the true power of Excel. Imagine you have been put in charge of a production for a theater company that you work for, and you have to do some calculations to find out what this show that you're going to put on, how much money it's going to make. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to use something up here on the Data tab under a what if analysis called Goal Seek, and we'll get to that in a second. So here's the information you have. You have been given the fact that no matter what you do as far as how many tickets you sell or the cost of the tickets, your cost to put the show on are going to be $1,500. So you want to calculate the revenue and the profit for a starting point. So say you'd figured out, okay, we're going to sell 920 tickets and we're going to charge $12.50 a ticket. We're going to see how that works out for us. So let's do a quick calculation here. The revenue is going to be equal to the number of seats sold minus the ticket price. So let's build a formula. Equal, click in here, multiplication sign, and then click in cost per ticket and press enter. We are going to bring in at $12.50 a ticket, selling 920 tickets, we're going to bring in $11,500. But our profits are going to be less than that because the profits have to incorporate our fixed cost, which will not deviate no matter how many tickets we sell or the price of the tickets. So we have to get our profit here. So to get the profit, what are we going to do? We're going to take, the profit will go here. We're going to take our revenue and we're going to subtract our fixed costs. So we're going to say equal the value where the revenue is, subtraction sign, and the fixed costs, and it's going to give us right there a profit of $10,000. So you're feeling pretty good about things. You're going to take these numbers back to your boss and say, I think we're going to probably sell 920 seats based upon our advertising capabilities, and we've decided to set the ticket price at $12.50. So your boss says, we kind of were hoping that we could make $12,000 profit here on the show, not $10,000 profit. So see what you can do to bump the profits up to $12,000 instead of $10,000. So you say to yourself, okay, in order to bump the profits up to 12,000, I've got to do, or I have control over two different things. I can either sell more tickets at $12.50 a ticket, or I can raise a ticket price from $12.50 to something higher and still sell the same number of tickets. I can sell 920 tickets at a much higher price. So there's something that will let you play around with these numbers here. So these are the two items that you have control over. So you can say, I want to try and see which one can give me the easier path to getting a profit of $12,000 instead of $10,000. So we're going to click over here. We're going to go to What If Analysis, Goal Seek, and this is kind of an advanced capability, but it's not really that hard once you understand what it's trying to do. So we're going to click on Goal Seek. It opens up this little window here, and it says, okay, so we're going to set a particular cell to the value that we want by changing another cell. So the cell that shows the value that we want is this one right here, our profit. So we're going to click here. We're going to click over here to highlight this little window, and then we're going to tell it that we're focused on this cell right here. And you can see it put the dollar sign before the column and the row, but it's actually cell K14, which is K14 right there. And we are going to click in here and tell it what value we want that to be. So we want it to be $12,000 because that's what the big boss asked for. He wants a profit of $12,000. And click down here, and this is either going to be playing with the number of tickets sold or the cost per ticket. So let's first try to adjust the number of tickets sold down here. So this is the cell we're going to change. So we got to click right here, which is K11, and we say OK. And all of a sudden we can see that to get a $12,000 profit, we have to sell 1,080 tickets instead of 920. Okay, so that is something that we could do. We'd have to sell 160 more tickets. Now I'm going to do a Control Z here to undo all that. And let's try another Goal Seek. This time we'll play with the ticket price instead of the number of tickets. So we're going to go back into Goal Seek, and we're going to do the same thing. We're going to say we want to change this cell right here. It's going to wind up equaling $12,000. But this time we're going to change the number that represents the cost per ticket. So that we're going to change this cell right here, and we're going to say OK. And now we can see that if we bump up the ticket price to $14.67, we don't have to sell 160 more tickets. We can just bump up the ticket price, and right there we have managed to realize our $12,000 profit. So we now know that we can do one of two things. We could either try a little harder and sell 160 more tickets at the original $12.50 price, or we might say, well, it probably would be easier just to raise the ticket price to $14.67 and stay at the original ticket estimate right there. So we would decide probably to charge $14.67 a ticket, and that way we are guaranteed our $12,000 profit. So this is a little example of how you can do forecasting and projections with Excel. This is using the Data tab, the What If Analysis section, and using the Goal Seek tool, which I think is very, very cool. Okay, so we're going to wrap it up at this point here. There's so much more I could show you, but I actually need to save for when we actually get into Excel in class. Don't worry about learning all this stuff now. I just wanted to give you a brief intro to show you some of the cool and powerful things that Excel can do, and I'll show you many more things once we get started next week. So we got about an hour's worth of video here, and I think that is more than enough for an intro. So I'm going to wrap it up, and we'll see you in class next week. Thank you.